Hello. Okay. Tonight I'm going to talk about white people. Right now is Sunday night at about 10 p.m. on October the 16th, 2016. What I'm going to look at is going to give an overview of white people, and this might come in a series as I get more time to address certain topics about them. What I'm looking at is just how they different from black people and how they different from the other people of the world. And they are different. Now, individually, great folks. There are white people that I met that are wonderful people. And so I'm not speaking about them, and this isn't about each and every white person. I'm talking about a group dynamic. About the group dynamic. Sorry about that noise. I just shifted and moved something on my desk here. About the group dynamic. What I'm speaking of is a general overview of the society's choices that it made. What I mean by that is that even though you might have people that dissent from a given point of view, if the end result is still the end result, then the dissenters don't matter because they didn't change the end result. What I'm talking about is that we're dealing with the end result. And so whoever has got all kind things to say and nice stuff about black folks and how they disagree with what's going on with black folks, appreciate the sympathy, but what are in the compassionate voice, but it didn't change the end result because the end result stands. And what the end result is that black people are being killed on the street without any consequence, without the perpetrators having consequences. Not sufficient enough. The consequences aren't sufficient enough to stop the action. So that's my end result. People might have 1,000 reasons and comments and ideas and concepts and actions and thoughts and marches and all of that stuff, but after all the comments are commented and all the actions are acted and all the thoughts are thought and all of that, the end result is still the same. So draw a line under all that stuff you got to think and say and do and believe, and then just draw a line under it and then write down that one sentence end result. Black people are being killed and nobody's getting consequences for it. So that's my end result. My comments and the succeeding stuff that I'm about to say is based on that given end result. Now, when I talk about white people, I'm talking about a social group dynamic that results in that end result. And so it's not about individuals, it's about that one group of people who decided that that was acceptable. And even if they don't think it's acceptable, that's still the end result. And we're talking about them. Now, if anybody gets a chance to, a good place to start is reading the book called The Iceman Inheritance. It's I think it's by Bradley or Brady or somebody like that, but it's called The Iceman Inheritance because this gentleman talks about why people are different. Most of us, and you might see a lot of books and concepts and people speak about sun people versus ice people. A lot of philosophy about that, and I agree with them because sun people versus ice people is different. I mean, sun people saw the new folks coming to the shore, had a big feast and welcomed them. Ice people don't think like that. They got walled places where they live, because they don't welcome the stranger in the same way. They understood military tactics and how enemies can come in your house. Some people couldn't wait for them to come in the house and gave them their best and the feast. They're thinking, as they feeding the ice people at the table, they're thinking things like, boy, oh boy, wait till they get a taste of my special fruit here and then this special dish I made. Wait till they get to see what we can do. ha, and then and they showing off, they trying to give a feast, and ice people are thinking about conquest. you know how you have a dinner party and you make a good old meal and you want to show off how good your cooking skills are. Well, they're thinking conquest for your cooking skills. They want you, your skills, and your food, and they got it. So whole different mentality. You're trying to show off and give the visitor your best, and because you expect them to also have a feast for you and show your best and spread out how good you are able to do things. But when you're good at doing things, they think conquest, not how nice they got it and how well they can do things. They, and give you bragging rights. You don't have bragging rights, you're going to wind up subjugated. So it's basically a when you read the Iceman Inheritance, and I'm gonna quote a lot of stuff and review a lot of his concepts, because that's one of the best books that succinctly put some of that stuff that I'm gonna discuss, and everybody can see what goes on with the cold weather mentality. And I'm gonna add barren weather, cold weather and barren lands. That means that they evolved in a hardship environment. They were adversarial with nature, and nature was their enemy. It killed them, and they lived there in a cold weather environment. When you got food, it was scarce, and it was a struggle. Everything about it, and it's a grab everything mentality. If you look at old European history, they'll talk about the walled cities. They'll talk about the land ships and the clans, and they were warring clans. They had I don't know how to put it, but they had frenemies. Frenemies. You'll be my friend when we unite against somebody else. You can be my trade partner, but if the times get hard for me, I'm gonna attack you, and vice versa. They attacked each other. There are words that are to this day in the English language based on those habits that they had among each other, like barbarian, from the Barbers. I think it's the Barbers. Those Germanic tribes and Saxons, and that's when they sack a city. That came from the Saxons' behavior. Not barbarian, and I meant not barbarian, but Vandal. That's the one I was thinking about. Vandal was from the when they vandalized a city. It was named after the Vandals, and sacking a city was named after the Saxons, because they would the whole horde of them would rush to the city or city state through their gate, past the moat, and finally get inside of the courtyard of the castle and rampage. They have all those movies like a horde of barbarians attacking a city. Well, that's what they did. They honestly did do that. Those period pieces weren't kidding. In the wintertime, they would go underground or in a cave, and they would take their animals with them, and they did be down there with those animals, and they were flea bitten. They didn't bathe, and they had a hard life. There were times when in the Dark Ages, and right up until the beginning of the Muslim Empire, which brought the Europeans out of the Dark Ages, they struggled. They didn't bathe. They barely could get enough to eat because they hunted, and they had trouble growing things. It was very difficult. Whole different mentality. Meanwhile, the people in the sun countries in the tropics didn't have that. They had food sources, and they let it grow. I honestly believe that if the European mindset wasn't so adverse to nature, that it probably would have been a more charitable place if they were able to be in harmony with nature. People who lived, for example, the Inuits are the people who lived in the North, not North Pole, but in Alaska, or in the cold regions, up in the cold ice caps, in the polar areas. They weren't starving, but if you look at where the terrain is, there is nothing that's really growing there, right? It's ice. When the Europeans come in that area, they were starving. The Indians, the Native Americans up there, taught them how to fish because the Native Americans were getting their nourishment from the ocean. The Europeans didn't know that there was abundance of food in the ocean. They were trying to grow things and do things. Like, I think there's some TV show on I heard about where if they don't get food, go hunting and get food for the winter, they would die. But they still are hunting on with boats and things on water because they still don't want to eat from the ocean. The people who lived up in that area when they got discovered, they were able to do that, and they did live from the ocean. Even when they came to here, this part of the world, the Native Americans had to feed them because they weren't growing. They were wanting to grow what they wanted to grow rather than what the land provided in abundance. And so the pilgrims and the colonists were starving with food all around them because they just didn't get it. The Indians, the Native Americans, would bring them food each winter, and then come spring, the Europeans would attack them. I think they did it about 2 or 3 years before they finally won, finished attacking the Native Americans. But different mentality. So that's that still astonishes me, but it's there, clear. Now, what I wrote down here that they are in an adverse relationship with nature, and they need to control and distort nature and everything else. By control and distort, no matter, even if it was an abundance of food, they'll still mess with it. No matter what, they're gonna still try to modify it and do all kind of stuff to it. If it came down to like, if there's something that's perfectly fine and doing everything it's supposed to do, versus something that's not, and your fix is going to hurt the environment versus enhance the environment, I swear to heaven they'll choose the bad option. Everything, they'll choose the most harmful option. That's what we're living in today, where they're choosing the harmful options. And it's, when I took my class in environmental history, I was dumbfounded because they were doing stupid stuff to the plants that we used to eat, genetically modifying the crops, the animals, all of that. And I still shake my head. So they distort it. They're distorting our genome. They're distorting everything we eat, in the water and the air. One of the things that puzzles me, and I'm going to get to it a little bit later because I'm going to talk about the barren world philosophy. So I'm going to hold off on that comment and come back to it. Okay? I'm going to finish discussing white folks. Now, they have a Germanic mindset. What I saw when I was taking my German history class and, well, German philosophy and literature, Germanic literature section of my humanities class, is that they, not, I want to say, not going to call it cranky, but a self-focused bunch of folks who were miserable in their own pain. They never reached out a helping hand, a comforting hand to their neighbor, but they all focused on their own pain. So they were self-focused and living in misery, and they stayed like that. So these are grumpy kind of folk. They aren't comfortable with a lot of laughter every day. Now, black folks can laugh in the worst times because we get tickled. We get tickled about stuff all day long. If you ever work with a bunch of black people with no white people around, we stay tickled. And we're steady working. But white people think you're not working when you're giggling and laughing and messing with each other with your, own little jokes and antics. Now, by law and order folk, they want things to be simple and straightforward and controlled. They're very, 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 very big on control. They want something, everything under their control, under some kind of control that they can witness and look at. So I call them law and order folks. But if you look at the police and modern policemen now, they've been doing this same dance for centuries. Most people are talking about the Gestapo or the overseers or Jim Crow. I say that behavior goes further back than that. I say it goes as far as back as the Roman legions. Yes, the Romans. This is the behavior that the Roman legions did to the regions around where Rome was, all the way up into Europe, North Europe, and all across northern Africa, where the Roman legions were. They did the same thing to the citizens. They would abuse the marginalized people, abuse the people who were not able to fight back. Black people are ripe for this kind of abuse because we are, I don't want to say docile because we're not, but we are obedient to the higher authority. Not only black people, but the Native Americans in South America were much like that. So if you tell us that this is a higher authority, and it could be religion or the law, we'll try to follow it because we like to, do what we're supposed to do. But that's a disadvantage for us because they have their Gestapo-like people walking around abusing that. This not only happened in Roman legion, but this is what happened in Europe, in the areas that surrounded the mansions and the lords, the fiefs, the serfs, all the other words that Europeans called each other when they described the subjugated people. It's the same thing, and these same behaviors were put upon those. The lords of the manors would attack, would send his people to harass the citizens, and they did some of the same things. That's how they kept control. So these behaviors are well orchestrated. Well, it's been there a while. It's been on the culture a while. When I saw the young man getting shot in the street, and I saw the reaction of white people around it, I looked at that and said, this was a real, well rehearsed kind of action. These behaviors and steps were familiar looking, and they all knew the same dance essentially. They just everybody and everything that related to it over and over again falls into place, and it's a well rehearsed kind of dance. Everybody knows their part. Everybody does and follows their place. They know exactly how to do this dance. They've been doing this dance a very long time. That's when I figured out they've been doing that dance a long time, because everybody knows their step, knows exactly what to do without any coordination from each other. They know what part to play. In fact, with the shooting of people now, when they do get arrested, they're not getting arrested for shooting them. They're getting arrested because they were sloppy about it. They're getting arrested and in trouble because they failed to do their part of the step properly. If the game is that if you can give the authorities plausible deniability and give them a good lie that they can pretend to believe, then they can help you get out of it. But if you don't even give them a way to dance around it and help you get out of it, then they will throw the book at you because you were sloppy. You weren't supposed to get caught. You weren't supposed to get challenged. And the people who were challenged, you weren't supposed to have a good way to prove it. And that's what's sloppy. So you get in trouble for being sloppy, not because you did it. Get that straight. Even the old days, so we I looked at this behavior's been there since the Roman legions, the Gestapo, then the slave overseers all know that dance. And right now, modern police, they call them, I'm not going to call them an officer, but I will call them a mercenary. That's, they're doing the same thing, same stuff, same stuff. Now, the thing is that in the 60s, if you look at my racial journey thing and I talk about the 60s and 70s, okay, in the 60s, in my mind, white people had temporary amnesty from all their past behaviors. They got amnesty in the 60s because they begged forgiveness, they tried to make it right, and they promised not to do it again. They pled ignorance about how their behavior, and they said they would stop. So they tried to make it right by doing civil rights thing and putting in civil rights kind of laws. They promised not to do it again by getting doors opened and all of that. And they acted truly repentant, and I was there. I saw them. This is a day-to-day white person, not the unseen hand behind the scenes orchestrating things. But the day-to-day white person was on the right path to doing right by humanity. And then they reverted. This reversion has happened over and over again. It's been going on. Some people are calling it Jim Crow, since Jim Crow days and slavery. I say it's been going on since the Greek Empire. Except we look at the Greek Empire, and only way you know what race they actually were is by some kind of description in the writing. In modern time we call it race, but in those days they called it by your nation or your clan or your tribe. So that they would say that Canaanite so and so, or that Philistine, or that whatever. They would name it by whatever tribe you are, your nation. They didn't call you black or white or whatever. Only way you would know what race they were or how they physically looked would be a description from one of their peers. Like, that's how I know Saint Anthony was black, was because he was called black and described by a man who was writing about him, who didn't like him, called him a big black ant. Described him like an ant, and he called him a big black ant as a description of him. That's how I know he was black, because he looked like a big black ant. Black men and tall, skinny black men can be described as big black ants, and have been. So that makes you a pretty black dude. There are other ones that I've read that are in the beginning of Christianity, and they were described as black people, just like any other black person to be described. So that's how I know it. Christianity began with the initial steps as black people, and these were people within the early years of it, not way back, not like 1,000 years into Christianity, but within the first few hundred years. These are black folks, a lot of them. So, and I'm saying that behavior that white people have when they abuse them is as old as the Greeks, certainly old as the Romans. So essentially it's been happening since the early years of meeting white people. We were just called different names, and we were able to hold our own in a battle. With white people, these are law and order folks, but they're also militaristic folks. So the only way you meet them as equals if you beat them. Oh, you get what I said? If you can take everything and beat them soundly, they will meet you on equal, and they will plead for equality among them if you got everything. So basically you have to beat them just to break even, or just take it. I honestly believe that they want us to beat them, because I think somewhere deep in their psyche there's a little bit of self-preservation in there, and they know they've gone too far in the planet, and they know they destroyed too much. but they don't know how to stop themselves. I think on some level they want us to beat them and take over because they know that they're going to destroy everything and they're going to die. It's almost like a murder suicide um, um, relationship with Mother Nature, where they're murdering her, but they'll kill themselves in the process. So, only people that can take it, only people that can ensure the survival of the planet is somebody who don't think like they do. And they know that they're destructive and are poisoning everything. They realize it. And I think on some level they want black people to take over or take it from them. Except if we do such a thing, we got to earn it. And so beat them at their own game or with our rules and take over in the long run so that we can save everybody. And I think on some level they want us to. Like a bad child that wants you to stop them from being bad. That's what I think. They are warlike, that's obvious, but there are many times they will say things like conflict makes progress and makes you survive and survival of the fittest and all that. Now, this other topic I'm going to look at is hypocrites and room to talk. Most people of color have this concept that shows up in different wording, but it means the same thing. And I want to call it room to talk. And this is used in a sentence is when I walk out the door in high water pants and I point out my neighbor's high water pants and they say a sentence like, you don't have room to talk, look at your pants. Or just, you ain't got room to talk. Most people, and certainly black people, will not critique or criticize you on a action or a habit that you have that they have. They don't have room to talk. That's a phrase, and that's how we use it. We don't criticize somebody else for doing something we are obviously doing, or even not so obvious. I can't walk out my house, and tell you that you have a dirty house, because in my mind, I don't have room to talk about nobody's house. That's the phrase, room to talk. Please get through your head. White people have no such qualms about doing that. They will walk out of their house and point out all the flaws in your house, even though theirs is worse. Get that through your head. That's what's happening now. Even the politicians. One politician is pointing his finger at the other politician, talking about womanizing and all kind of bad things they do to women and think about women. And they will point that out and jump up and down about it and fuss at you about it. Then it comes out that they were doing worse, even while they were talking about you. This is a unfortunate scenario because black people presume that when you're criticizing me about something I did, that you have already solved that problem in your world, and so you got room to talk if you're talking about me doing something bad. I'm telling you, they will criticize you despite them not having room to talk. In fact, they will criticize you louder the less room they have to talk. This is hypocrisy at a new level. Okay? Get that through your head, because right now, and in the past, we have let them take control over things when we thought they would do a better job of it, because we thought they had room to talk when they were criticizing. They walk up and say, oh, this building is so bad and you did it so badly, or oh, this land has been treated so badly, you did it so badly, let me take over so I can make this work. And you give it to them because they told you they can make it work. But in fact, they did terrible things to their own, and they don't even have what you have because they've already destroyed theirs. And I'm talking about Europe compared to Africa. So Africans thought they had room to talk when they critiqued and criticized how Africans are doing things, and then they get control, and so they do it even worse, or do it well for them, but they didn't ever help the hordes. Any scenario like that, if it's going on, look in the background, look in what they actually do and don't have, because they might not have room to talk when they're criticizing you. Even in politics, they don't have room to talk. And we're seeing that right now play out in front of us. One of the reasons I'm bringing this up is this. Um, Black people are being punished for their sins, in essence. They won't punish their own for their bad and wrongdoings. They would claim that they're not doing it. But then if you do it or even take one step in the direction of doing it, they will punish you and throw the book at you for it. Same thing. And it's and I do say that yeah, they're being punished for white people's sins. Like if black man does something untoward to a female, he gets a book thrown at him. But white men do worse, and nothing happens, or barely nothing happens. So even if the two males were together being bad, doing this terrible stuff, the black man, even if he did the least, will basically get all the punishments for all two or three of them, all of them that were there. If it's one black male there, they get all the punishment, and the white males essentially get a slap on the wrist and or go free. When even if you didn't do as much, or even if you did very little, there's some black males that was even just in the vicinity, and they got the book thrown at them. When the ones who actually did it didn't get much of anything. There are some even trying to disbar judges because of the way the sentences was carried out, where the bad guys who did the deeds and the bad things did not get punishment, and you punishing somebody who was barely there. And to me, that's you getting punished for their sins. And that's something to keep in mind when you're dealing with white folks, that they know somebody's supposed to be punished for it, but they don't want to punish their own, and so they throw you under the bus, or throw the book at you. You become the scapegoat. I say again, don't fool with them, or to any extent possible, to the extent possible that you can avoid fooling with them, don't. And certainly don't join them in their shenanigans, because you will get the book thrown at you, and you will be bearing the burden for all of their sins. That's one of the reasons I absolutely believe there was a Jesus, because these scenarios happening today aren't that far-fetched from what was going on then. It's still going on. It hadn't stopped. It just died down and then reverts, and died down and then reverts. Right now we're seeing them revert to their behavior again. And this time, in the 60s, they got amnesty, but amnesty gets revoked when you revert. So amnesty, you don't have amnesty no more, and now you got to pay the full price. In my mind, the full price is about 3,000 years worth of good behavior on white people's part, and only then will we take them at face value and do right and stop marginalizing them. But first you gotta be on the path of showing righteous behavior for 3,000 years. Otherwise, I think they should be shunned from the rest of humanity. Okay, so they've reverted, and it goes over and over again. So now I think they should be paying the full price. I got down here. We've already talked about the horde of barbarians and hypocrites and wounded talk. Number 4, topic 4 would be zombies, apocalypse, and barren world. All of these are science fiction concepts, but it also gives an insight on how they think. Like I was alive, and I went to the first airing of the first zombie movie, was Night of the Living Dead. And that was such a phenomenon at the evening when we went to it, and it was a fun movie. But when we were walking home, there was a drunk man staggering down the street, and that was the only time I really got scared, because he was lurching around looking like a zombie. But that first zombie movie spawned thousands of zombie and of TV shows and movies and haunted house things and video games and costumes and all of that, even on like the face makeup show. Most of them are zombies or some form of a Walking Dead person. This has been a big old concept in the European white man's mind. And what I'm looking at is this, and this part is not science fiction, but it's true. There's an insect or a few insects, and I think it might be a fungus too, that can take control of another insect and make it act as a drone for its will. It's for example, I think if some kind of larva from another insect that plants itself in the brain of a spider, and it forces that spider to make it a certain kind of web that'll help protect it. It's a different kind of web. It's some kind of larva. It's some kind of creature that plants itself in the brain of another creature and makes it do what it wants. And there's more than one of them, but they're way out in some place, in a South American place. It's something that gets in an ant and make it do what it wants. It plants itself. And when the people who were writing about it were writing about it, they were said no, and one of the final things they said in their last paragraph was, no one knows how to make it work. No one knows how it works. Now that was the most alarming sentence of it all when I was reading that and reading the articles, was because somebody was trying to find out how it works. If you find out, that's alarming. If you actually did find out how it worked, then what would you do with it? If mankind finds out how that works, what would mankind do with control of something that control another person? Because that's exactly what they would do. They would put it in another person and make that other person act as drones for their will. So right now, today, somebody's trying to figure out how to break the codes of controlling one creature by the other, taking another creature's autonomy physically and controlling what they do. That's why I'm worried about your zombie movies, and there is said to be a zombie apocalypse battle plan in government to what to do about the zombies coming. Because that's, if somebody takes over your autonomy, that's what you essentially are. If somebody takes over your brain. So that's just something to think about. Another thing that we keep seeing in science fiction movies are this barren apocalyptic world, or post-apocalyptic world, where everybody's running around with their swords and guns and can't get gas, and everybody's kind of savage. I honestly believe that on some level they want that too, and they keep showing movies like that because they like that wildness, that ungovernable, out of control kind of world. And that's on the horizon if we don't get our act together. It's either that and get white people under control, or else have that kind of world. And their science fiction is telling you how they think. And I'm a science fiction fan, if you watch that carefully, they're giving you all kind of insights into how they're thinking. And so your Mad Maxes and some of these other post-apocalyptic kind of worlds, it's a good insight, to look at how they might be thinking. And including the barren world where you can't get food. Never mind that it takes about a year or so to plant crops and have a harvest, and if you just leave it alone, the crops will grow anyway. All you got to do is plant it. You have plenty of food if like they take away a big old portion of the population, but everybody's fighting over the canned goods. Interesting, because I think they want that kind of thing, because this was going to be happening if we don't get them together and stop it. I'm thinking on some level, one little bitty bit of self-preservation is trying to force our hand into jacking them up and getting them under control. And I'm not talking about going to war with them, because right now in our mind we can't go to war with them because we're not united enough to go to war. We will be fighting not only them but fighting ourselves. We never fought white men without internal struggle. And with them, they're going to be coming at you without that internal struggle. There will be no struggle. They can fight unified if mind. Everything about what they do is unified. When they make a decision to do something, they do it unified. We don't. To me, it's part of our rhythm. Is point counterpoint. That's rhythm. So we have point counterpoint not only against each other talking, we also have it within ourselves. So we cannot fight anybody until we get rid of our point counterpoint. We got to be united. And it doesn't matter what size your country is. If you're united people, then you can win any war. But American black people and black people throughout the world aren't united, not even. So we can't fight a physical war with white people, because we will be divided and they will be united. And so you can't fight. But you can do legal stuff, such as stop fooling with them, figure out how to vote and get communities that are controlled by black people, and have your police force fight and get laws changed to have a police force that's under control, get judges disbarred and put out, impeached, or whatever you got to do, removed. I would like to see us put forth, for example, citizen police laws, citizen to police laws and law change. That is, for example, I want us to have the political and legal and financial power to change laws, such as one I would have changed would be, if an officer stops you, then he or she has to have a specific reason for stopping you, and they have to voice that. They cannot ask, and have it so that they cannot ask any questions of you without that relevant reason that they stopped you. Okay, like for example, another law would be traffic. If it's not something that's immediately meaning danger, then they can't stop you. If they want to write you a ticket, then they press the buttons and point it in and put it in without even stopping you. Take a picture and do what they have to, like traffic lights and all the other things that takes a picture of you. Then that's what they need to be doing. Take a picture and have the traffic ticket mailed to you. They shouldn't be stopping you unless they got something that's immediate safety or health danger. But for a speeding ticket alone, no, unless it's really fast. But if all you're gonna do is tell them they got a busted tail light, then write it to them. And for example, with busted tail lights, I have never seen a busted tail light on a car but about twice in my whole bunch of years of driving, because it's a rare thing. So I'm thinking these officers are actually busting those tail lights just so they can stop the car and create a situation. I also have several other things that need to be changed, like with judges. I like to see them, if they give disparate sentencing, then they need to have immediate disbarring. Really, they should be on probation. And if they do it again, they get out of that courtroom. Can't be in a courtroom. Can't sit on the bench because you're not impartial. That kind of thing. Those kind of laws, we need to have the political clout to make happen. And you can do that through economics, and you can do that through legislation. Because if we are united and vote a certain way and control a certain area, we can have little enclaves of specific laws that cater to our needs. And I'd like to see that. Now, this final little topic here is white folks have made their move. Now it's time for us to make ours. You remember when I was talking about that bottom line? The bottom line is that black folks are being shot up in the street, and there are no consequences, to speak of because of it, to the ones that are killing us. So I would be through talking to white people about what to do about that. It is not for them to deal with it. I don't even want to hear a white sympathetic voice. I shouldn't be the one you talking to. You should be talking to white people, other white people that you need to jack up and pull aside. You should not be talking to us. Black people are the easy audience. This is the audience where things don't get done. If you're talking to us, you should be over there making things happen or stop happening. But for black people, it's for us to make our move. They have moved their piece on the chessboard. I can't get mad at you after you done moved your piece. I have to look at you and see what you did. And my thing is, it's time for me to make my move, and my move will be based on what you just did. So my move is based on that. Stop talking to white people about their crap. They know they're doing their crap. It's up for us to do something about it. We don't, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't want to talk anymore about how white people are treating us, except to illustrate a point about, and then bring up what you're going to do about it or what you have did about it. I am tired of hearing about all the bad stuff they're still doing, because we already know they're doing it. So I don't want us talking to them no more about it. We need to be talking to each other and talking about what to do. And we need to be doing that behind the scenes, not with white people. They can't help us. They have chosen not to. So if they want to help, they need to make that decision among themselves and then fix it. Physically fix it so that we can see a change. And then we start the clock, counting up to 3,000 years so that we believe the change. That's the full price to make it right. It's 3,000 years. And I have to see consistent behavior that's fair for 3,000 years. Short of that, you get ostracized again. So it'll be that long. They have to pay the full price to make it right. And so they haven't yet. And my final sentence is this: it is up to us to make our move and make sure we never be vulnerable to them again. Yes, because we let ourselves be vulnerable for whatever reason we did. We let ourselves be vulnerable, and we can't afford to do that again. That's going to be the end of this one for now. I'm going to go finish doing my laundry. But anyway, and I'll be addressing this topic in various subtopics throughout these course of these recordings. Yeah, so I just wanted to start right there. So white people are different than black people, part 1. And so that's, let me stop clicking. Thank you, and good night.